Here's the Canon XC15. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 things I like and 5 things I don't like about this camera. Let's get started. The first thing I like about the camera is the body design. When I first looked at this camera online, I didn't really know what the size and the dimensions were in the hand. I mean, I saw what they were in the spec sheet, but having it in my hand for the first time and using it is a joy. This is a mini C100 and it's very hefty. It's not a lightweight camera. Although it is a lightweight camera, but it is not as lightweight as it looks like. There is a bit of weight to it that's in a good way. It'll still fit on a gimbal and you can still use it like you would a DSLR, but there's a certain feel to this camera that's unlike other DSLR cameras. So the handling of this camera is amazing, just like this. I can run and gun with this camera, and it's very fun to shoot with in this form factor. I also love this rotatable grip here, where in previous models, in other cameras, and other Canon cameras, cinema cameras, you had to rotate a dial in order to change the hand grip position, but this is so lightweight that you can just, with pressure, move it. There's no clicks, but once you move the grip, it stays that way. So that's very good when you're operating this camera in different positions. And it goes all the way this way, and it can turn complete 90 that way. I really like this rotatable grip. And I also like all of the custom buttons that are minimal. They're not a ton of buttons, but the buttons that are here are ones that you would use often. This dial here is set for your f-stop, and then you have a magnification, which you need when you're in manual focus. There's also a dial here that's very similar to the DSLR dials, because this does shoot photos as well. The second thing I like about this camera are the codecs. It shoots to CFast, which I'm going to complain about later, but there's a CFast card and there's an SD card. Here are the codecs. You have 4K and HD. When you're in 4K, here are your options. You have 305 megabits at 30p and 24p, and 205 megabits at 24p and 30p. And when you're in the HD mode, these are all MXF 422 8-bit Long-GOP, not IntraFrame. Canon somehow was able to get the MXF 422 codec down to 35. Normally it's 50, and I wonder if the 50 would have been better at 30p and 24, but 35, better for storage, and I like the HD codecs a lot. The third thing I like about this camera is the gamma modes. You can go into your gamma settings here, which are basically picture profiles, and on your picture profiles, you have Canon log and you have YDR amongst other profiles. But the Canon log and the YDR are the gamma modes that you want to use if you're going to match this camera to the cinema cameras. The fourth thing I like about this camera are the shutter speed controls. You don't usually have a lot of control over shutter speeds like you do with this camera. Here you have a big shutter wheel that you can go into fine increments, where you can't go into these shutter increments with other cameras, but this one allows you to. You can also change the shutter angle. So instead of going by the speeds that photographers are used to, you can change the angle so you can go by the angle of the shutter. And this has flicker reduction modes, where if you're shooting a LCD screen or a TV screen, or you're outdoors shooting with fluorescent lights that flicker, these have shutter speeds that you can switch on to reduce those flickers. Then the fifth thing I like about this camera are the audio ports. This is the microphone, and the headphone jack are on this side. I'll get into the Xlr Module with one of the 5 things I don't like about the camera, but with this 3.5mm jack, you can put your audio accessories and go in, and you have your headphone jack, and you can control the audio in steps in the menu. Here are now 5 things I don't like about the XC15, and some of these things are deal breakers for me. The first thing I don't like is the lens. This lens is a 24 to 240. But this focal range only applies when you're in photo mode. When you're in video mode, these numbers change. It ends up being a 27.3 millimeter to 273 millimeter in video mode. When you're primarily using this camera, these numbers, the focal numbers, they're not what they are in the LCD screen. That's pretty confusing to me. I wish, since this is primarily a video camera, have these be the video focal ranges. And the lens starts at f2.8 and then it goes to 5.6 on the full telephoto. But then once you start creeping in, it immediately stops down. So the 2.8 is really only for the 27.3 millimeter at the extreme wide angle. The minute you start going in just by 5 millimeters, it already stops down. So this lens is terrible, terrible in low light. The second thing I don't like about this camera is the 1-inch 12 megapixel CMOS sensor. Now it's 12 megapixels in stills, but it's 8.29 megapixels in video. So that's the same pixel range and size sensor as the GX10 and the XF400 that just came out. But there's no dual pixel in this one. It's no dual pixel. So the autofocus with this slow lens and the dual pixel sensor makes it not as good in autofocus. The third thing I don't like about this camera is the fact that it uses CF card media. The CFast 2 cards are expensive, and because the data rate to use 4K, to shoot 4K, is at 205 megabits and 305 megabits, you don't get a lot of record time. If you're shooting events, weddings, long interviews, and you want to shoot 4K, this is not the camera to get, because you're going to be spending an arm and a leg on the CFast cards. You have no other codec options besides shooting the 305 and 205 MXF in 4K to the CFast cards, or 35 megabits and 50 megabits at 30 and 24 on the SD card. The fourth thing I don't like about this camera is that you only have one level of ND, and the neutral density filter is only accessible inside the menu, or you have to make it a custom button. The fifth thing I don't like about this camera are the accessories. Now, I'm glad that they include accessories like the Viewfinder and the Xlr Module, but look at the size and actual usability of these accessories. Here's what the camera looks like now. So the Viewfinder is good insofar as blocking out all of the sunlight if you're outdoors. However, since a lot of the features in the camera are in the touchscreen menu, you can't use the touchscreen anymore, and you can't use the touchscreen to touch focus. You have to navigate through whatever physical controls you have left. And also, over time, if you use this a lot, this whole Viewfinder is connected with this hinge here, and there are no hard stops. It's over time, this is going to wear out, and this is one of the things that are going to break with heavy use outdoors. From what I've read, this audio module, Xlr Module, was taken from the C300. So you could use this if you have a C300 or a C100 Mark I or II. You could use this on that camera, I believe, because the connection appears to be the same. So that might be good if you have the other cinema cameras. But using this in practice is very difficult. Not only is the Xlr Module the size of the camera itself, there are no other cold shoe mounts, the mounting points. So you have the shotgun microphone that I removed, but you can put the clip on the shotgun microphone here. But if you want to clip on an audio receiver, you're gonna have to build yourself a big rig. You can't just put the receiver somewhere, because there is no place to put it, because the hot shoe, the cold shoe, is being used. I'm happy that Canon included an Xlr module with the camera, because the XC10 didn't have it. However, to me, unless you have a big rig, this is not useful in the field. It shoots to the Canon LP E6N batteries, and they last about 115 minutes. So if you're shooting a long interview, you're gonna have to swap batteries or use the included DC in, which is on the side here. Now I'm gonna show some test footage I shot outside. I'll show some 4K UHD down converted to 1080 for this video, and then 1080 that I shot directly to the SD card.